$3,000. I turned it over, running my thumb across the embossed company logo. It was the same logo I'd seen on every email signature, every report I drafted, every piece of corporate garbage I'd produced for 3 years, and now it sat on this envelope like a taunt. I didn't even bother opening it. I already knew the number. Around me, the office was on fire. Champagne corks bounced off the ceiling tiles. Someone screamed, 18,000. And I watched a girl from accounting literally jump up and down, her heels clicking against the floor like a demented metronome. Babe, you won't believe it. I'm getting the Chanel. No, the real Chanel. Marcus just texted. He wants me to transfer it straight to the mortgage. Can you believe the audacity? Drinks at the Peninsula. Everyone. I'm not taking no for an answer. A celebration. A raucous, unrestrained, utterly oblivious celebration. And me, sitting at my desk in the corner with my dead plant and my dying laptop, holding a thin envelope that could have been an eviction notice. Melanie from HR caught my eye from across the floor. She gave me this tight little smile, the kind of smile people give you when they've seen something they shouldn't have. Then she turned away quickly, like she was afraid I might come over and ask her about it. I didn't blame her. I wouldn't have talked to me either. Samuel Brooks walked past my desk. He didn't walk by. He walked at me like he was a battleship and I was a life raft he wanted to run down. He'd been positioning himself for weeks, feeding off my scraps, waiting for the moment when my career flatlined so he could step over the corpse. Hey, Anna. He practically glowed. You get yours yet? I didn't look up. I did. His phone materialized in front of my face. Screen at maximum brightness, $18,000, displayed like a trophy. This company is insane. I mean, I knew they appreciated hard work, but this... He whistled low and long, like he was watching a sports highlight. Some of us just know how to deliver, you know? I kept my eyes on my keyboard. Dust had collected between the keys. I'd stopped cleaning it weeks ago. Look, I'm not saying everyone can do what I do. He leaned against my cubicle wall, casual as a snake. But you gotta ask yourself, when you see numbers like this, what did you do wrong? That landed. He knew it landed. 2 years ago, I pulled in a client that accounted for 17% of our annual revenue. Samuel wasn't even in the room. He'd been on vacation, posting Instagram stories from Bali. My name was on the contract, MY hours were on the timesheet, MY signature was on every deliverable. And Zachary Carter had put his own name on the commission report. I hadn't said anything then I'd taken the team bonus, $3,000, same as I was holding now, and I'd smiled and said thank you. Zachary had patted my shoulder and said, Anna, this is what we call learning the business. He did that. I'd stayed quiet. And Samuel had watched all of it, and he'd understood exactly what it meant. I was a target, a soft one, someone you could step on, and who would apologize for the footprint. Anna? He was still standing there, waiting for a reaction. You okay? You seem kinda, he waved his hand vaguely. Flat. I've seen Samuel. Hey, I'm just trying to help. You know, if you ever want to talk about what you're doing wrong, I've got some... Samuel. I finally looked up. You've got $18,000 in your account. Go spend it. I'm sure you'll find someone who cares. Something flickered in his eyes. Not quite anger. Not quite embarrassment. Something in between. Like he'd been expecting me to cry, and I'd disappointed him. He walked off. I exhaled. And I opened my encrypted file. It started 3 years ago. My first week. Zachary Carter had called me into his office and given me a list of 27 high-value clients. Their contact information is in the CRM, he'd said. Any questions? Ask the team. So you've got this. Except the CRM was wrong. Half the email addresses bounced. Most of the phone numbers went to administrative assistants who'd never heard of me. One of the accounts turned out to be a defunct company that had been acquired and renamed. I'd spent 6 months fixing it. 6 months of cold calls and detective work, tracking down the actual decision makers, convincing them to take meetings with a junior account manager they'd never heard of. I built relationships from nothing, but I stayed late. I arrived early. I learned every client's birthday, their kids' names, their favorite restaurants, their deal breakers, their private cell numbers. Every single one of them started calling me directly. Not the company. Me. And every single one of those relationships ended up on Zachary's quarterly reports as team successes. I watched him climb. I watched him take credit. I watched him get promoted, get his corner office, get his $18,000 bonus while I got my $3,000 and a pat on the head. And all that time I was saving everything. Every contact, every email, every piece of leverage I would one day need. I told myself it was just good practice, just in case. But I knew someday I'd walk out that door. And when I did, I'd take every single one of those relationships with me. A ping from my computer. Internal chat. Melanie, HR, Anna, can you come to my office? 5 minutes? Anna, on my way. I closed the encrypted file, typed my password over the keyboard, and left my desk. The hallway was quiet. Everyone was still celebrating. As I passed the conference room, I heard Zachary's voice from inside, elevated and theatrical. Not just a bonus. People, this is validation. This is what happens when we operate as a team, that I couldn't have done it without every single one of you. I walked faster. Melanie's office was small. A single filing cabinet. A plant that had seen better days. She gestured to the chair across from her desk and closed the door before sitting down. Anna, I'm not going to dance around this. She folded her hands. Your contract is up next week. I've been authorized to inform you that the company has decided not to renew. She said it like she was reading from a script, which she probably was. I nodded. I'm sorry. She didn't sound sorry. It's just budget reallocation. The board's making some tough calls. You understand. Sure. We'll give you a severance package. 2 weeks. And a recommendation letter if you want one. Thank you. Melanie blinked. That's it. What else is there? I don't know, she gestured vaguely. Anger? Tears? A threat? You're not the first person I've had to do this to, Anna. You'd be surprised what people say. I looked at her. It was easier to hold the silence than the rage. I've known for 6 months, I said. I've been planning for 6 months. I'm not surprised. I'm not angry. I just want to finish my week, pack my desk, and move on. Melanie stared at me. Then she looked away. Zachary asked me to tell you. He's got a project he wants you to finish before you go. He said it's a priority. Of course he did. Of course. Send it over, I said. I'll take care of it. The project arrived in my inbox that afternoon. Subject: urgent. Weston Group proposal. Anna, this needs to be turned around by Thursday. Full RFP response. Weston's a massive opportunity for us. I'm counting on you to deliver something that wins them over. Attachments: Weston Group RFP, 142 pages, client research packet, company capability deck. I scrolled through the attachments. The RFP was enormous, complex, technical. A nightmare project that required intimate knowledge of client history, deep technical integration, and customized pricing models that would take days to negotiate. And I had 3 days. If I was a betting person, I'd put money on Zachary waiting until my last week to hand me this. Keep me busy until the end. Squeeze every drop of value out of me before showing me the door. But here's the thing about Zachary Carter that he never understood. I had already talked to Weston 6 months ago. I'd had lunch with their VP. I knew their pain points. I knew their internal politics. I knew the exact language they needed to see in a proposal to convince their board. I'd been building a relationship with Weston for a year, same way I'd built relationships with everyone on my list. And now I had 3 days to write a proposal that would win them over. But I also had 3 days to make sure that no one at this company ever touched that account after I left. I started the proposal on Monday night. The office was empty by 9. Everyone had gone home to count their bonus money and update their social media profiles. I opened the Weston files, typed up the first section, and sent a text. Whoa. Quick question about the Q4 integration specs. Are you free for a call tonight? Paul, Weston Group Anna. Been a while. Was wondering when you'd surface. I'm free. You okay? Anna Fine. Just want to make sure I get this right. You deserve the best we can offer. I didn't tell him I was leaving. I didn't tell him the proposal I was drafting would be the last thing I ever did for this company. I just asked the questions I needed to ask, recorded the answers, and went back to typing. At 2 a.m., I leaned back in my chair. My neck ached. My eyes burned. But I had a draft. Not a complete draft. Not the polished version Zachary would need to present to the board, but a draft. A framework. And in a separate folder, I had something else. A list. Every relationship I'd ever built. Every client who called me directly. Every executive who trusted me, and only me. Every piece of leverage I'd accumulated over 3 years. The folder was called Personal Contacts. I'd labeled it that way to be boring. To be uninteresting. To be exactly the kind of thing no one would ever look at. I opened the folder and scrolled through the list. Weston Group. Pacific Logistics. Arbor Capital. 7 more blue chips. 42 mid-market accounts. And dozens of smaller clients who'd always preferred to talk to me. When I left, they would leave with me. Every single one. I closed the folder, deleted my browsing history, and locked my computer. Then I went home, slept for 3 hours, and came back the next day like nothing had happened. Tuesday was worse. Zachary called me into his office at 9 a.m. He was already holding a drink, something amber in a crystal tumbler, the kind of prop that signaled, "I've made it," while simultaneously telegraphing the exact opposite. Anna. He sat behind his desk and leaned back. How's the proposal coming? On track. Good. He swirled his drink. You know, I was thinking about what you said last week, about your future here, and I wanted to let you know, I appreciate what you've done for this company. I kept my face neutral. Thank you. Weston's huge. Huge. If we land this account, it's going to open doors for all of us. I'm talking promotion opportunities, expansion, more headcount, a whole new division maybe. Great. So I need you to make sure this proposal is flawless. Absolutely flawless. If I see even one typo, one section that's a little, he made a vague gesture, sloppy. I'll have it done, I said. Good. He smiled. Because I'm thinking about the future, and I'd hate to see someone with your talent, he paused. Leave. It would be a waste. A real waste. Zachary was lying to me. I'd known him for 3 years, and I knew exactly what he sounded like when he was trying to manipulate someone. This was his, "I'm your friend, I'm looking out for you" voice, which was his second most fraudulent voice. His most fraudulent was the "I'm being honest" voice. I just nodded. I'll make sure it's perfect. Oh, and Anna. He gestured toward the door. I need you to transfer everything to the shared drive when you're done. The team should have access to your working files. For a moment, I let myself hold eye contact. Let him see the split second of stillness that meant I was considering his words. Then I said, "Of course," and walked out. That night, I worked later. Paul from Weston called at 10 p.m. "I've been thinking about your integration approach," he said. "It's smart. You've actually read our architecture specs, which puts you ahead of, I'm not exaggerating, every other vendor we've talked to. I did my homework. That's what I've always liked about you, Anna. You're thorough." A pause. I heard something through the grapevine. "You're leaving your company?" I'd been careful. I hadn't told anyone, but grapevines had their own logic. "Not yet," I said. "End of the week." I had a feeling. Paul didn't sound surprised. "Look, if you ever want to talk about opportunities, I know people. Weston's always hiring." And honestly, he laughed low and warm. "I'd rather work with you than any of your replacements." I'll keep that in mind. I hung up and stared at my screen. That was the thing about 3 years of genuine relationship building. Clients don't stay loyal to a logo. They stay loyal to the person who solved their problems, who answered their calls at 2 a.m., who remembered their daughter's ballet recital and asked about it the next morning. I built a web of trust with every single one of them. And Zachary Carter had spent 3 years assuming that web belonged to the company. It did not. On Wednesday morning, Melanie from HR came to my desk. Anna, I'm supposed to escort you to your exit meeting. Standard procedure. I stood. Now. Right now. The exit meeting was short. A checklist. Forms to sign. A polite, impersonal conversation with someone from corporate who'd never met me before and clearly didn't care. At the end, the woman handed me a printed letter. Your contract ends at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please ensure all company property is returned by then. Of course. I went back to my desk and continued working on the Weston proposal. I'd finished it on Tuesday night, actually. I'd polished it twice. I'd even run it through a readability checker and added a few cosmetic formatting improvements. But I hadn't uploaded it to the shared drive yet. I was going to wait until the last possible minute, so no one could review it before I left, and then transfer it through the official channels. What I wasn't going to tell anyone was that I'd spent the last 6 hours copying the proposal's core insights into a private file, not the text, exactly, not the structure, but the logic. The decision flow, the exact arguments that would make Weston say yes. When I walked out the door, the Weston proposal would be a ghost. Something that looked complete, but had no substance, a container without a soul. Zachary could present it. He could dazzle the board. He could try to secure the account. But when Weston actually called to talk through the details, the person who knew the answers would be gone. The person who knew the answers would be me. Thursday, 2 days left. Zachary called another all-hands meeting. This time, he was standing in front of the conference room whiteboard, marker in hand, drawing a flowchart that looked suspiciously like everything I'd put in the proposal. I want to thank Anna, he said, pointing the marker at me like he was introducing a speaker at an award show. She's been instrumental in making this happen. Without her contribution, we wouldn't be where we are. I felt eyes on me, some surprised, most wary. Samuel in the corner, sitting with his arms crossed, like he was trying to figure out whether he should feel threatened. Of course, Zachary continued, this is a team effort. And I'm proud to say that the culture we've built here, the collaborative culture, is what really sets us apart. He smiled at me. Anna's done a lot for this team, more than she knows. I didn't say anything. I just kept my face neutral. And I thought about the encrypted folder on my laptop, the one with 98 contacts to 98 executives who trusted me, not the company. 98 relationships I'd personally cultivated and maintained for years. Zachary Carter was going to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between ownership and possession. Friday, my last day. I arrived at 8 a.m. I'd spent the night transferring files, deleting caches, and making sure the traces of my private folder were gone. The Weston proposal was on the shared drive. Complete, clean, professional. I'd uploaded it at 6 a.m. No one noticed. I packed my desk in silence. A book, a mug, a framed photo of my grandmother. Nothing else. Everything I'd accumulated in 3 years fit into a single cardboard box. I walked the box to my car, came back, and sat at my desk for the last time. At 9 a.m., Melanie from HR arrived with a cake. Goodbye lunch, she said, smiling. Everyone's invited. The conference room filled up. People picked at cake. Samuel circulated, making jokes, clapping people on the back. Zachary stood at the head of the table, making a speech about growing together and looking forward. I sat at the edge of the crowd. I'd been on the edge of this crowd for 3 years. Nothing new. At 3 p.m., I called Paul. Hey, I said, I'm out. Out. As of today. Silence. Then Paul laughed. You know, I was wondering when you'd pull the trigger. Does this mean the proposal's still alive? Proposal's done. It's their play now. I was calm, steadied, and I knew what came next. But Paul, you know how this works. You need someone who knows the details, but that's not them. They'll present something that looks right, but it won't be right. You mean? The insights are in my head, not in the document. If you want a real conversation, call me. I will. I'm serious. So am I. We hung up, and I walked back into the office to wait for the clock to hit 5. At 4:30 p.m., I heard it. A phone ringing, muffled through a closed door. Zachary's office. Another. His assistant's desk. Another. Melanie's office. Then the silence broke like glass. What do you mean? He wants to cancel? I'm sorry, what? This has to be a mistake. This is our biggest account. Someone's voice, sharp and terrified. All of them? What do you mean, all of them? I didn't look up. I kept packing my box. Samuel ran past my desk, his face white. Anna, do you know anything about this? About what? People are calling. Clients. There, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and swallowed. They're canceling. I can't get through to anyone. How many? He stared at the phone. I don't know. I don't. Zachary's office door opened. He stood in the doorway, his face frozen in something between disbelief and fury. His phone was pressed to his ear. I could hear the tinny drone of someone talking on the other end. Then he looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time. Anna, he said, we need to talk. Sorry, Zachary. I picked my box. I'm done. I walked toward the exit. At the door, I turned and looked back at the office one last time. People were scrambling. Phones were ringing. Zachary was shouting at his assistant, his face blotched red with something that might have been panic. Samuel was sitting at his desk, staring at his screen like he'd just watched his entire career disappear. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every clock tick and refrigerator hum. I set the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. 3 years of my life, condensed into a box the size of a microwave, the book I'd never finished. The mug I'd chipped on the second day, and my grandmother's photo, still smiling at me from inside a frame. I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years, and was only now remembering how to exhale. Then my phone buzzed. Paul, Weston Group, just confirming. You're out, right? Because I got 4 people from your old company calling me, and none of them know what they're talking about. I smiled, typed back, I'm out. And no, they don't. Paul, good. Because I just told Zachary Carter I'm putting the entire proposal on hold until I can talk to you directly. He didn't take it well. I leaned against the counter, rereading that last line twice. Me. What did he say? Paul. He tried to tell me you'd moved on and that I should deal with him. I told him I'd rather deal with a root canal. Then he got angry. Then he tried to pull the "We've been partners for years" card. I said, "We've been partners with Anna, not with you." I read that 3 times. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the screen. Me. Thank you, Paul. That means more than you know. Paul, don't thank me. Thank yourself. You're the one who actually showed up. Listen, I'm serious about that offer. If you want to talk about doing something on your own, I've got connections. Call me when you're ready. Me, I will. I set the phone down and pressed my palms against my eyes. 3 years of being invisible. 3 years of watching Zachary Carter take credit for my work while I smiled and nodded and told myself it was just paying dues. 3 years of Samuel Brooks walking past my desk like I was furniture. And in one afternoon, all of it had been undone. Not by me, by the people I'd actually helped. The phone buzzed again, then a 3rd time in quick succession. Unknown numbers, clients I hadn't spoken to in months. People I'd helped once years ago who'd remembered my name and my face, and the fact that I'd stayed on the phone with them at 2 a.m. when their systems crashed. Anna, is it true you left? We're pulling our account. The new guy can't even find our contract. Whatever you're doing next, I want in. Just tell me where to send the check. One after another they came in. Not angry, not demanding explanations, just loyal. I sat down on my couch and watched the messages scroll past. There were 15 of them by the time I stopped counting. 15 clients who'd chosen me over the company. And I hadn't even asked them to. That was the moment I knew, really knew, that I'd never work for anyone else again. The first real explosion happened at 6:13 p.m. Laura Wilson, HR assistant Anna, are you okay? I'm sending this from my personal phone. The whole office is on fire. Zachary just got called into the CEO's office, and he came out looking like someone killed his dog. Me, I'm fine. What happened? Laura, all those clients, the cancellations, they just kept coming. BY 5:30, we'd lost 43 accounts, 43. That's not even counting the ones that haven't called yet, but probably will. The CEO went ballistic. He made Zachary explain it in front of everyone, and Zachary tried to blame you. I stopped breathing. Me, blame me? For what? Laura, he said you'd poisoned the relationships, that you'd been building a personal fiefdom and sabotaging the transition. He said you'd been planning this for years. I stared at the screen. It took me 3 tries to type back. Me, what did the CEO say? Laura, he said, then why didn't you notice? And then he asked Zachary why he didn't have backup contacts for every major account, and Zachary couldn't answer, because he didn't. Because all the backups were just, so now everyone's trying to call clients to get them back, but no one has the right numbers. Samuel literally spent an hour calling a company that hasn't existed since 2019. It's a disaster. I put my phone down. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Zachary Carter had spent 3 years ignoring every warning sign because it was convenient. He'd let me do all the work because it was easier. He'd taken all the credit because he assumed I'd never leave. And now he was trying to blame me for his own incompetence. That was the moment my quiet satisfaction curdled into something colder. Not anger, not triumph, just certainty. I was never going back there. My phone rang at 7:45 p.m. I didn't recognize the number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Anna Mitchell? It's Richard Weston, Paul's boss. I don't know if he told you, but I've been watching your work for a while. I sat up straighter. Richard Weston was a senior VP, Paul's boss. I'd met him once, briefly, at a conference. He'd been polite but distant. Not the kind of person who called junior account managers at home. Mr. Weston, I'm surprised to hear from you. I heard you left your company. No preamble, and oh small talk. I also heard they're scrambling to pick up the pieces that I don't know the details, and I don't need to. What I need to know is, what are you doing next? I hesitated. I'm not sure yet. I was thinking about. Don't answer yet. He cut me off. Let me tell you what I'm offering that I want you to come work for Weston Group, directly, but full-time. We'll give you a VP title, a team of your own, and a budget that'll make your former employer weep. And you'll be reporting to me, not some middle manager who doesn't know a balance sheet from a sandwich. I opened my mouth, closed it. That's a very generous offer, I said carefully. It's a fair offer. You've spent 3 years fixing a broken system and getting nothing for it. I'm offering you a real seat at the table. Pause. Think about it, but don't think too long. I've got competitors who want you too. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in my living room, phone in hand, pulse racing. VP title, team, budget, a real seat at the table. Everything I'd ever wanted, delivered in a single phone call by someone who never needed to see my resume. And yet, I didn't say yes, because something had shifted in me, something I couldn't quite name. 3 years of being ignored had taught me something I hadn't realized I'd learned. I was better on my own. Not better as in more skilled. Better as in more myself. When I worked for someone else, I bent, that I folded, that I made myself small so others could be big, that I told myself it was just how things worked. Everyone did it. But Paul and Richard Weston had just proven otherwise. People wanted me, not the company, not the title, me. And the only way to keep that, the only way to be sure I never lost it again, was to never let anyone else own my relationships again. I opened my laptop and started typing. The first draft of my business plan took 3 hours. It was rough, full of typos and half-formed ideas, but the core was there. A strategic consulting firm, focused exclusively on high-value client relationships, and employees, and overhead. Just me, my contacts, and a retainer model that made every client sign a contract directly with me. I called it Mitchell Advisory because I wasn't creative enough to come up with anything better. Then I sent an email to Paul, Richard, and the other clients who'd reached out. Thank you for your interest. I'm not joining any existing firm. I'm starting my own. I'd love to discuss how we can work together on a consulting basis. Let's set up a call next week. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. The knock came at 9:15 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door in my sweats, hair a mess, coffee in hand. Zachary Carter stood on my doorstep. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, casual, like he was trying to appear approachable. But his eyes were red-rimmed, and his hands were shaking slightly. He had clearly been up all night. Anna. He said my name like it was a lifeline. We need to talk. I didn't move. Zachary. How did you find my address? Laura Wilson. She told me. I told her it was an emergency. I was going to kill Laura later. But right now, I had to deal with a man on my porch. Say what you came to say. I didn't invite him in. I wasn't going to invite him in. He held up his hands like he was surrendering. I made a mistake. That I should have. I should have seen what you were doing. You were the backbone of the whole department. That I knew that. He shook his head. I got comfortable that I took you for granted, and I'm sorry. I waited. That's it. I said. I want you to come back. He stepped forward. Not as account manager. Director don't make you director. Full control of the entire client portfolio. Your own team, your own budget. Whatever you want. I leaned against the doorframe. Is that what you think I want? A promotion? I think you want to be valued. I'm offering that. Zachary. I took a long sip of my coffee. I resigned. My contract ended. I'm not coming back. He blinked. Then his face hardened. You're being irrational. This is a business decision, Anna. You don't throw away 3 years of institutional knowledge because of... Because of what? I cut him off. Because of you? Because of Samuel? Because I sat in that corner for 3 years while you took credit for everything I did and never once said thank you? That's not a business decision. That's a self-respect decision. He stared at me. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Anna. Goodbye, Zachary. I closed the door. He knocked again, and again I heard his voice through the wood, muffled but still sharp. You think you can do this on your own? You think clients will follow you? They'll forget your name in 6 months. You're not irreplaceable. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. I've heard that before. I said to no one. My phone buzzed at 10:30. Laura, Anna, I'm so sorry. He made me tell him. He said he'd fire me if I didn't. Please don't hate me. Me, I don't hate you. But next time, tell him no. Laura, there won't be a next time. I'm putting in my notice. I can't work there anymore. Everyone's miserable. Samuel spent all morning trying to call clients, and half of them just laughed at him. Zachary's on a warpath. It's like the whole building is on fire, and he's standing in the middle of it yelling at everyone else to put it out. Me, what are you going to do next? Laura, I don't know. I've got some savings. I'll figure it out. I stared at that message. Then I typed. Me, I'm starting my own consulting firm. I need an admin, someone to handle logistics, scheduling, the boring stuff I hate. Would you be interested? There was a pause. Then, Laura, are you serious? Me, I'm serious. It won't be glamorous. The pay won't be 18 grand in a bonus envelope, but I'll never make you give out my address to someone who threatened you. Laura, I'm in. I'm so in. When do I start? Monday. Send me your direct deposit info. Laura, you're the best boss I've never had. I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd had in weeks. But the day wasn't over. At 2 p.m., a delivery came to my apartment. A huge bouquet of flowers, the kind that probably cost $300, with an ornate card attached. I opened the card. Anna, I'm not giving up on you. You're too talented to throw your career away on some solo project. Let me buy you dinner tonight. We'll talk about the future. I ripped the card in half. Then I took a photo of the flowers, sent it to Laura, and wrote. Me, does he think this is going to work? Laura, I don't know, but I can tell you his credit card was declined twice at the florist. He's not doing well. I threw the flowers in the trash. By Friday night, I had 17 clients signed on for initial conversations about consulting agreements. I had a verbal commitment from Laura to join me. I created a logo using a free online tool, and I'd registered a domain name. And I'd received exactly 1 call from Zachary Carter since the flower incident. He called at 6 p.m., just as I was making dinner. Anna, you're making a huge mistake, he'd said. I've been talking to clients. I've been reassuring them. The company's going to stabilize, and when it does, you'll have burned all your bridges. Zachary. I paused, a spatula in my hand. You lost 43 clients in 1 afternoon. You don't stabilize from that. You survive it, barely. He'd hung up. I'd finished making my pasta, sat down, and eaten it while scrolling through email. And at 8 p.m., a new message arrived. Paul, Weston Group heard you're starting your own thing. Richard wants to sign a retainer tomorrow, and I told him you'd probably need a little time to set up, but he's not exactly patient. Let me know when you're ready. I typed back. I'm ready now. Send me the contract. Then I closed my laptop, leaned back on my couch, and looked at my apartment. It was small. It was cluttered. It was mine. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't waiting for anyone else to tell me what to do next. Late that night, I found myself scrolling through my old company's internal chat logs. Laura had forwarded me some screenshots from the group chat, the one Zachary had excluded me from for months. I'd expected to see panic, desperation, maybe some finger pointing. What I saw was worse. Samuel. We all knew she was going to leave. She never had the right attitude. Too quiet, too weird, always kept to herself. Zachary agreed. She was never a team player. I'm not surprised she went rogue. I actually expected it. Melanie, HR, but she was the one doing all the work. Zachary. Work isn't everything. Attitude matters. Character matters. And she didn't have it. I stared at the screen, frozen. They'd been saying this about me for years, and no one had ever told me, and no one had ever defended me. The narrative had been set long before I left. I was the problem. I was the one who didn't fit. I was the one who deserved to be pushed out. And the worst part? They actually believed it. Zachary had convinced himself that I was the villain, that I'd been planning my betrayal from day one, that I was somehow the disloyal one, the saboteur, the person who'd undermined the team. He'd done that to make himself feel better, to avoid looking at his own failures, to tell himself that losing me wasn't a loss, it was a relief. I closed the chat. My hands were shaking. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't understood before. Zachary wasn't just incompetent. He was dangerous, because he didn't just exploit people. He rewrote reality to justify the exploitation. If I ever tried to work with him again, he'd do it all over again. He'd use me, take credit for me, and then convince himself I deserved it. There was no going back, not even for an apology. I typed a final message to Laura. Me, I'm going to be successful, and when I am, he's going to call me a traitor again, and I won't care, because I'll be building something real, something no one can take credit for. Laura, that's the spirit. Now go to bed. You've got a million emails to answer tomorrow. I put my phone down, and I slept better than I had in months. Monday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. I started drafting proposals. Mitchell Advisory was officially open for business. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't invisible. I was the only person in the room. The phone rang at 8 a.m. Anna Mitchell, this is Richard Weston. I've got a contract for you, but you need to know something first. I'm listening. Your old employer, Zachary's firm, they're still trying to salvage the accounts you took. They've been calling all my people, trying to spin a narrative. They're saying you stole proprietary information. They're saying they're going to sue. I stopped typing. They're threatening a lawsuit? They're trying to scare you. And frankly, they're trying to scare me. They think if they throw enough legal weight around, I'll drop you and go back to them. I set down my coffee. I felt cold. The kind of cold that starts in your stomach and spreads. Richard, I didn't steal anything. All my files were company property. I left them on the server. Everything I did was within. I know, he cut me off. I already had my legal team look at it. They can't touch you. You built those relationships while you were employed there, but the relationships themselves aren't proprietary. They're personal, as long as you didn't take trade secrets, you're clean. I exhaled slowly. However, he paused. They're going to try. They'll issue a cease and desist. They'll try to drag you through discovery. They're counting on you being too scared to fight back. I thought about Zachary's face on my doorstep. The way he'd pleaded. The way he'd threatened. He was running out of options. And desperate people did desperate things. Richard, I said, what do I need to do? Nothing. I've already got my lawyers on it. You just focus on doing your work. Let me handle the rest. I blinked. Why would you do that? You barely know me. Anna. His voice softened. You spent 3 years building trust with my people. That's not something I forget. You helped us when we were in trouble. You always answered the phone. And you never treated us like a checkbook. I was just doing my job. No, you were doing more than your job. And that's why I'm standing with you now. Pause. Plus, I've always wanted to sue Zachary Carter. He's got terrible taste in shoes. I laughed. Actually laughed. The tension in my shoulders released all at once. Thank you, Richard. I mean that. Don't thank me. Just send me that contract. I hung up, my pulse still racing. Zachary was threatening a lawsuit. He was trying to scare me into backing down. And he had no idea who he was dealing with. Because I wasn't the same person who'd sat in that corner office for 3 years, taking abuse and saying nothing. I'd left that person behind. She was gone. And in her place was someone who'd been underestimated long enough to know exactly how to win. I opened my laptop and started writing the response I'd been planning since the day I walked out. It wasn't a lawsuit threat. It wasn't a formal letter. It was an email to every client who'd ever worked with me. Subject, a personal update. Dear valued partner, you may have heard that I've left my previous employer. I want to assure you that this decision was voluntary and made with my future in mind. I've started a new consulting firm, Mitchell Advisory. My focus will remain exactly where it's always been, providing you with the highest quality strategic support and relationship management you've come to expect. All my contact information remains the same. All my commitments to you remain the same. The only thing that's changed is that I'm now working for myself. I'm writing to ask for your trust and your continued business. But more importantly, I'm writing to thank you. You've made my career possible, and I look forward to serving you for many years to come. Warmly, Anna Mitchell. I hit send to a list of 98 addresses. Then I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let myself imagine what happened next. The phone calls, the contracts, the invoices, the feeling of building something that was wholly, completely mine. Zachary could try to sue me. He could try to scare me. He could even try to poison my reputation. But he couldn't take what I'd already built. That was the part he had never understood. Relationships aren't like property. You can't own them. You can only earn them. And I'd earned every single one. The email went out at 9:07 a.m. By 9:15, my phone had started vibrating. By 9:30, I had 47 replies. By 10 o'clock, I'd stopped counting. Anna, we're with you. Whatever you need. I'm forwarding this to our legal team. If they come after you, we'll fight. My husband works in tech. He says your former employer is toast. You did the right thing. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what was happening. I'd expected a few supportive responses. Maybe a couple of confused ones. What I got was an avalanche. And then Paul called. You need to check your LinkedIn, he said. I don't have LinkedIn. Your old account. It's still up. Zachary's been posting about you. I opened the app. I hadn't logged in for months. The first thing I saw was a post from Zachary Carter, published just 30 minutes earlier. It's unfortunate when employees mistake company relationships for personal assets. We're consulting legal counsel and will be pursuing all available remedies against the former employee who attempted to destabilize our client base. The comment section was already a war zone. Some people were defending me. Others were calling me a rogue employee and a liability. One person had written, she was always a bit off, quiet. You know the type. I scrolled down. There were more posts, screenshots of internal emails, doctored to make me look like I'd been planning this for years. Comments from Samuel Brooks about how I'd never been a team player. I zoomed in on one. It was a screenshot of my own contract with a note. Notice how she was already making plans to compete with the company before her contract ended. I looked closer. The contract was real, but the date had been altered that I end the original. The relevant clause was from my second year, standard non-compete language that any junior employee signed. In the screenshot, it looked like I'd signed it during my final month. Someone had photoshopped the date. I called Paul back. Paul, they're doctoring documents. They're posting altered screenshots on LinkedIn. Send me everything. I'll forward it to our legal team. This is defamation. This is. Paul, I need to think. I hung up. My hands were shaking. This was worse than a lawsuit threat. This was a coordinated campaign. Zachary wasn't just trying to scare me. He was trying to destroy my reputation. He wanted to make sure that even if I won the contracts, I lost the trust. And he'd been preparing for this. He'd been gathering materials, building a narrative, waiting for me to make a move so he could counterattack. I thought I was walking away clean. I thought I was leaving behind a mess that would collapse on its own. I hadn't realized that Zachary was making a mess of his own, and he was perfectly willing to drag me into it. At 11 a.m., Laura called. Anna, I have something you need to see. I found this in the company's shared drive. It's from 3 years ago. What is it? I'm sending it to you now. Read it before you respond to anyone else. I opened the file. It was an internal memo, written by Zachary Carter, dated 3 months after I'd started. Subject, Personnel Assessment, Anna Mitchell. Anna is technically competent, but socially awkward. She tends to keep to herself and doesn't engage well with the team. While her work product is generally acceptable, I have concerns about her long-term fit. Recommend keeping her in a non-client-facing role until further notice. I read it twice, 3 times. And then I laughed. A dry, hollow laugh that echoed through my empty apartment. 3 years ago, 3 months into my job, he'd already decided I wasn't good enough. He'd already put me on a path to failure. And he'd been managing me according to that assessment ever since. All those projects he'd given me, all those impossible deadlines and impossible clients, they weren't tests. They weren't opportunities. They were proof. He'd given me the hardest assignments so he could point to my failures and say, see, she's not fit for clients.